So it's 11 o'clock sharp. I think we can start the program. Medical students have joined from their class, if you can see.
Yes.
They are first year MBBS students, both boys and girls.
Lovely.
And they have joined directly. So in this way, others will also be joining directly from their class. So let us start, madam, if you...
Yes, Professor Agarwal, just as is convenient for you, because we should keep time and
yeah. So that is why I'm
you
saying.
know your constraints best, and
So
it's a long story to tell.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't want to waste time in any other formalities. We are straightway starting this program.
Okay. Thank you, madam. Thank you for giving this opportunity. I'm just trying to start the program. And good morning to all, and very warm welcome to this online lecture of Dr. Pratibha Jolly, madam. It is my proud privilege to welcome our respected speaker, Dr. Pratibha Jolly, madam, the PI GATI program and academic consultant, NAC. Madam, on my behalf and on behalf of the GSET BHU, I welcome you. It is really a great opportunity for us to get a chance to hear you and learn a lot. Thank you, madam, for accepting our request. I welcome Professor Madhulika Agarwal, madam, the Nodal Officer, GATI BHU, and Dean's Faculty of Science, Banaras Hindu University. I take this opportunity to welcome all the participants joining the program in online mode. Our institution, Banaras Hindu University, has been established by our visionary founder, Bharat Ratna Mahamana Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya ji. Malviya ji was very much concerned about the equal opportunity of education to all without any gender discrimination. While addressing the then existing social problem associated with the females' education, Mahamana established a women college in 1929 within the campus of BHU for the pre-university course. But at the same time, in his convocation address, Mahamana said that after PUC, female students will also study with male students at the same place. That means BHU is an institution whose founder was so visionary that he was working on the system for equal opportunity even 100 years from before. Hence, it is naturally an appropriate place for DST's Gati pilot project. We hope that we will be able to achieve some substantial output at the end of the project and will be a role model for the others. With this short description of Banaras Hindu University and its concepts regarding the gender equality and gender advancement, now I request Professor Madhulika Agarwal, the Nodal Officer for GATI and Dean Faculty of Science, Institute of Science, Banaras Hindu University, to give the introductory remark regarding the today's program. Madam, it's over to you.
Thank you, Professor Neelam Srivastava, for a wonderful welcome, also giving an insight for the vision of our founder, late Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya. Dr. Pratibha Jolly, today's guest speaker, the PI of Gati program of DST, advisor of NEC on the gender advancement issues, and most importantly, also, the former principal of Miranda House, affiliated with Delhi University, and you all have heard about that college. It has a very high rank in NIRF and DAC and all that. So on my own behalf and on behalf of the Banaras Hindu University and on behalf of all the institutes of STEM, science, technology, engineering, medicine, and mathematics, it's my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Jolly, who would be giving us an insight that what is the aims and objectives of this particular GATI program. And also, you know, the way she took the Miranda House in all ways, in excellence of the academics, in the excellence of the culture, and in the transformation during the tenure of his principalship. Just for an introductory remark, I would say that gender advancement for transforming institution, in short GATI, is an innovative pilot project launched by the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. In fact, this project GATI was announced on 28 February 2020. That is the National Science Day by the Honorable President of India at a celebration dedicated to women in science, which was held at Vigyan Bhavan, New Delhi. This project GATI aims to nudge the institutions of higher education and research towards supporting diversity, inclusion, and the full spectrum of demographic talent for their own success and progression. In particular, this program has created an enabling environment. That is very important aspect. Enabling environment for equal participation of women in science, technology, engineering, medicine, and mathematics discipline, which is in short called as STEM, at all levels, addressing deep-rooted problems, what are there, that will also be identified. This program envisages a fresh perspective on not just measures for increasing retention and recruitment of women, but also the progression of women throughout their professional journey. So if somebody has joined, may have a lot of problems during this journey, breaks also because of the family or some other aspects, then also this will help. This project is looking into those perspectives or policies which will help the women in the progression of the professional career. BHU feels pride in identifying as a GATI pilot institution. GATI pilot work, basically, all GATI pilots will work on a self-assessment and accreditation model, and they are expected to commit to adopt its principles within the policy. So what we are going to do is that we need to do some radical changes in our existing policies, practices, action plans, and institutional culture. We are very happy and proud that the kind of institutional culture was started from the very inception of this Institute of Higher Learning by our founder, Pandit Mahamanaji. In fact, a SMART, again it is an abbreviation. SMART means specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound action plan is expected from each GATI pilot institution for systematic and cultural transformation. So it is not very simple thing. We feel very good when we got this project, and probably there were 700-800 applications, out of which 30 institutions have been selected for this GATI pilot program. Madam will tell the details of that if she knows it. Success in our endeavor of achieving the GATI objective would lead to an institutional award. What will happen later on? It will lead to an institutional award and recognition as a beacon of the gender equity. That really, I mean, there is a gender equity or not. And this will depend upon the feedback from all of you who are attending this particular workshop, and many more who may not be attending the workshop, but we will approach them also. And the most important thing is that this advancement is not just for female. Male participants need to understand that what is the aims and objective of this. And I'm very happy to see a lot of medical students who would be, after the lecture, would certainly ask questions from madam to understand that what is really, it is meant for. So through this project, DST will engage, mentor, partner, and support BHU to work towards reaching the global best practices for gender equity. BHU is indeed, and I am in particular, as nodal officer of GATI program at BHU, and with all the members of the GSET, are highly obliged to Dr. Pratibha Joly, the academic consultant NET, to accept our invitation of delivering a lecture on this issue to enable the BHU fraternity, all of us, to understand the aims and objectives and the process of self-assessment. Our entire GSET team, representing all STEM institutes, including institutes of medical science, science, agricultural science, environment and sustainable development, and Mahila Mahavidyalaya. Welcome you, Dr. Joly, and all the participants at this occasion, which is very special, as being convened in very close to the International Women's Day also, which is going to be celebrated on March 8, 2022, with a theme. The theme of this year's Women's Day is Break the Bias. Imagine a gender equal world. So that is the theme of that. मैं एक बात सबसे कहना चाहूंगी कि हमारे प्रधानमंत्री और हम सब ये बात करते हैं कि आत्मनिर्भर भारत होना चाहिए। आत्मनिर्भर के लिए हमें मानव संसाधन की सबसे ज्यादा आवश्यकता होती है। Human resources are most important for, self-reliant India. और अगर हमारी आधी आबादी जो कि महिलाएं हैं, लड़कियां हैं, तो अगर हमारी आधी आबादी इसमें अपना योगदान ना करें तो ये लक्ष्य कैसे पूरा होगा। और इसी को देखते हुए गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने उन लोगों के लिए, एटलीस्ट अभी स्टेम के लिए, इसके बाद ये और सब्जेक्ट्स में भी आएंगे, लेकिन अभी एक पायलट प्रोग्राम की तरह शुरू किया है। और मैं बहुत प्रसन्न हूं कि बनारस हिंदू यूनिवर्सिटी, जिसका कि नेक एक्रीडिशन भी अच्छा है, NIRF रैंकिंग भी यूनिवर्सिटीज में विद इन 3 है, हमें ये अवसर मिला कि हम लोग इस डायरेक्शन में भी गति के ऑब्जेक्टिव्स पर काम कर सकें। तो एक बार मैं आप सभी का जो यहाँ है स्वागत करती हूँ, और मैं आप सबको इसमें आगे भी इन्वॉल्व होने के लिए रिक्वेस्ट करती हूँ, क्योंकि आज के इस प्रोग्राम के बाद हम लोग बहुत ऑफन एक दूसरे से मिलेंगे और मिल करके हम लोग काम करेंगे, सेल्फ असेसमेंट करेंगे। ये कितनी अच्छी बात है कि हम अपना असेसमेंट खुद करेंगे, और उन्हीं के बारे में मैडम अभी बताएंगी कि किस तरीके से ये काम करना चाहिए। हम लोगों को आगे बढ़ना है। So with these few introductory remarks, I thank again Dr. Joly for giving us time today for this wonderful program, and thank you very much to all the participants for joining this interactive session. And I would request all of you to prepare, some questions after the deliberation by Dr. Joly. So over to you, Professor Srivastava. You are muted.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for giving the basics about the GATI and about the targets and goals with which this program has been started. And it is really a great pleasure for us to have Dr. Pratibha Jolly, madam, who is an expert of this field. And as you informed the audience, she has been the principal of the Mirinda House, a great institution. So now, without taking any more time, I request Professor Roina Singh, madam, to introduce our speaker, Dr. Pratibha Jolly, to the audience and request her to deliver her talk. Dr. Roina Singh, madam, over to you.
You are not audible. You are muted probably. It is still not audible.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you are. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, very good morning to all of you. Sorry for the technical. We wanted to incorporate about 120 of us plus the entire lab. So about 150 of us are here joined in with my faculty members, Dr. Chetan, who has come from AIMS New Delhi, Dr. Deepa, who is from Andaman and Nicobar and has joined us recently, Dr. Umesh from Lucknow, and Dr. Gunjan, who has been serving IMS. We have Dr. Rupesh from Patna and Dr. Manisha Upadhyay, who is standing next to me from Lucknow. We have students here who are from Tamil Nadu, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and we have, I might be leaving some states, but from all over India. And they have all gathered here as a students, but also as a part of this GATI and the gender orientation program, which has been proposed by her. And I take this opportunity to introduce our esteemed speaker here, Dr. Pratibha Jolly. She has served 14 years since 2005 to 2019 as a principal of Miranda House, that is College for Women at University of Delhi. Under her dynamic leadership, the college received All India Rank 1 under NIRF, a feat sustained for 5 years since 2017. Dr. Jolly is currently leading the development of GATI. So what is this? GATI is the gender advancement for transforming institutions, self-assessment framework, resources and guidance as the principal investigator of this novel pilot project, which has been launched by the Department of Science and Technology. Dr. Jolly has other feathers to her cap. She was the chair of IUPAP for 6 years on physics education and vice president IUPAP from 2005 to 2008. She was also awarded the IUPAP to physics education for development with an international impact. She was the co-chair of thematic group on education for development of National Science, Technology and Innovation Policy 2020. Dr. Jolie also received PhD in chemical physics from the University of Delhi in 1980. She is a fellow of National Academy of Science of India and Institute of Physics, UK. Currently, she is with the National Assessment and Accreditation Council as an academic consultant. So I wish you to clap your hands to welcome the speaker, all of you. Dr. Pratibha Jolie, who will share her views in this pilot study of GATI. Thank you so much.
So thank you, Professor Agarwal, for inviting me to this, historic university. And thank you to all colleagues who have gathered here, and special thanks to the students. And very interesting that the medical students are taking the lead in this. So before I begin, let me quickly tell you the genesis of this program. When I superannuated from Miranda House in 2019, very soon DST approached me and they said that it'd be nice if I could develop something for women in science in STEM disciplines. And for some time, the country had been thinking of a successful program. Athena Swan, launched in UK for about 15 years. It had produced good results. So if we could do something similar. I did that point in 2019 summer, a concept note, which I called GATI, Gender Advancement for Transforming Institutions. We're delighted that it caught the imagination and it was picked up by the government. And British Council also came on board, and they also wanted to join in as partners and support it. And through that, therefore, a UK partnership developed. One thing led to another, and it has been slow to take off. As Madhulika ji has said, it was announced by the president at Vigyan Bhavan, but when we are working in such a huge country, there are other systematic delays. So it is only now that we are really well on the way. So I would be very delighted now to share with BHU as a pilot institution the GATI framework and other details of it. I was asked to give a hour-long talk, but it is already 11:24, and so if I have to rush through, you will, bear with me. Let me share my screen, and please let me know when you are able to see it. Can you see my screen?
Yes, madam, it's visible.
Yes, yes.
So I'm really happy that we are here today at BHU. As has been said, one cannot, of course, also begin without paying one's respect and homage to Mahamana Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya, because its vision and legacy, an institution that started way back in 1917, is carrying forward the pioneering work. With BHU began the renaissance of Indian education, and as has already been said, enshrined in the vision and mission of this great university was the concept of equality for men and women, and obviously also of other marginalized sections of society. But education of girls and women has been really hardwired into the DNA of this institution. So I'm very, very happy to be here today and to partner you and join you as a colleague on these high lofty ideals of the university. So GATI is really a very novel program. And why is that so? Obviously, for a very long time, since independence, even before that, there have been many schemes which have spoken about how to, enable women and through education, what can be done. But most of these schemes have, focused on scholarships for individual women or research grants to individual women. And when highly educated women, sometimes for societal reasons or for marriage or for moving across cities, are not able to continue in profession, how to bring them back, how to increase the retention and help them to manage career breaks. So facilitating mobility has also been a very important component of the government schemes. They've been supporting women universities, entrepreneurship is the new mantra, and women technology parks are being set up. A very important component of government schemes has been to motivate young school students to pursue careers in STEM disciplines. You have the Inspire program of DST or Manak or Jyoti, and all of them have yielded results. But if you were to look at gender statistics, you can say that the needle has not moved at all, despite all these efforts over decades. So GATI is now changing the focus completely. We are not looking at individual women and facilitating them. We are now focusing on institutions as a community, an institution as a self-learning organization. And, institutions in India are, many of them are world ranking, highly competitive, and they have immense scholastic talent and are capable of solving complex problems. So we will pose to you a problem that is outstanding. And despite so much of so many schemes and funding, the gender statistics needle has not moved. In fact, the enabling environment also, many times you should be probing on what has been achieved. So take charge of your own selves, and with the given talent in the university, please look at it. There's a complete shift in focus and you are in charge. And we are here only to nudge you. So the strategic intent of GATI is, as was read out from our mandate, that it is to support diversity, inclusion, and the full spectrum of talent for success and progression of all, including women. So gender is to be viewed not as being synonymous with women or females, but it is a far bigger gender spectrum that we are talking about, and eventually that we will cover the entire gender spectrum and so on. So with GATI, we joined the international programs. We joined the international gender equality charters. As I've said, it's inspired by Athena Swan, but GATI is completely indigenous. We've developed it for our ethos and our systems. Athena Swan was adopted in toto by Australia as SAGE. It's been adapted by USA as Sea Change, but USA and Europe have very many interesting programs that have worked for close to about 40-50 years, and there's much we can learn. So other countries are joining in, but we are extremely happy that here we are with our own program, and it's important to see what kind of linkages we have. So DST has invited me to develop this framework. As I said, it goes back to even before GATI was floated to the concept paper in 2019, and through its Women in Science division and with British Council on board, we have brought in Advanced HE UK, and we helped select 6 Athena Swan accredited institutions in UK to partner with 30 pilot institutions in India. And there's a well-structured program of partnership that is already ongoing, and Benares Hindu University is partnered by University of West Scotland and also has a group of other peer institutions from across the country. So I do suggest that these partnerships should be leveraged and they should be strengthened. And your institution has so much to give. So it is not about mentoring. It is about learning from each other and sharing best practices. And that is going to be a journey which is going to take place. So Professor Agarwal did say that I should talk a bit about how BHU came to be on board. DST PhD felt that if 30 institutions only were to be selected, maybe we could just sit across the table and choose them. But I felt that we should check on how institutions are able to engage with the data. So I developed an expression of interest application, and through an open call, institutions were invited to apply. And we got about 190 applications, of which 148 were found to be eligible, because others were all women institutions or colleges or open universities and so on. And apart from giving us some of the data, they answered on some specific dimensions. One question was about, what are your gender policies? And I must share that I was stunned when I started analyzing the applications and going through them. None of the institutions was able to answer a simple question like, what are your gender policies? The answers were very fragmented, and that showed us that nobody had ever been asked this question before. So this was not on center stage, and that provided us a mechanism for a baseline data and an understanding of what is happening, because something as simple as a maternity leave was also not considered as part of a national policy, and so on. So that internal complaint committee against sexual harassment is in all institutions. That was there, that was taken for granted. But beyond that, we did not receive a comprehensive, detailed gender policy. So GATI therefore rests on the insight that I gleaned from the expression of interest applications, and 30 institutions were selected out of this. And I'm extremely glad to share with you some of this baseline data from those universities that have been selected. These are central and two state universities and one private university. So you see on this abacus the number of undergraduate, postgraduate, PhDs and faculty in purple color, and a red that I have called as a research cohort. So if you were to look at BHU, you have faculty that's about 20%, which is almost half of the number of PhD and postdocs. Now, this is extremely worrisome, and we want to focus on the young population, which is the PhDs, the early career researchers, research associates, postdocs, and so on, because this is the generation that is aspirational and is going to carry forward the science, technology, and other aspects of India. And if we have to progress, then this cohort is very important. So I take that together, and the research cohort gets pushed to 30%. And therefore, it is very clear that some kind of an intervention is required, because we are really far from parity as it is. And if you were to look at, say, the All India State of Higher Education report, the latest, then you will find that if you look at the basic sciences at postgraduate level, females are doing rather well. In fact, in botany and zoology and life sciences, they have, exponential increase to about 75%. And same thing at PhD in life sciences at 60%. And physics maybe a little less at PhD level, and but we are more or less at parity. Now, that can also be pretty worrisome, because when you have more females in academics, maybe 10 years later we will have to ponder on the question of how to get the men back into the classroom. And so anything has its own fine thinking and nuances, as it is called, and any data needs to be interpreted with a lot of care. And that's the reason for my sharing it with you. And again, if you were to look at the ASHE data, All India, on undergraduate studies in sciences, females are doing very well. In engineering, the share is hardly 30%, and 40% in IT and computer science, which is the future of technology, and so on. And at PhD, IT and computer, more females are coming in. So that, again, is something that we need to look at very sensitively, that how come there are so many women who are coming at PhD level? Is it that the boys and the men are going into the corporate world, or that they are looking for other careers in computer science and so on? But in engineering, these numbers happen to be less, which is also reflected in numbers. If you were to look at institutes of national importance, till some time now, BHU IIT was very much a part of the university. Today, it's a standalone institution. But if you were to see, if you compare with the undergraduate students of the old IITs established late 50s and early 60s, then, and the new universities established in this century, BHU, of course, is an older institution that became an engineering institution that became an IIT, that the trends are the same. The number of women happens to be less than 15%. And the same thing is repeated at postgraduate, and the same thing is repeated at faculty level. So aspirational young women who are coming in large numbers having done their PhD, in fact, more than 50%, then where do they go? It means, therefore, it is said you go back to schools or colleges to teach there, and that is the terrain in higher academia and research institutions is not there for women. And this is where we need very strong interventions such as GATI. So female talent is knocking on the doors of prestigious institutions and saying that we have equal educational attainment and we want also to be partners in the progression of science and technology in India at the premier institutions. And that is where the problem is. And BHU has a similar problem. If you were to look at your data, then across the pipeline in the STEM domains, postgraduates are hitting close to 50, but the faculty is just about 19-20%, and therefore there's issue to be resolved and to be understood. And I had already shown this to you as a Baker's chart. And if you were then within that data to look at how many professors are there, it's just about 17%. So women, if they're not at the professorial level, how will they become part of the deanships or decision-making committees? And if you compare yourself against other universities in the top NRF 100 and BHU being at number 3, you can see that the student score is 11 out of 15, faculty score happens to be 13, and so on. And this is the other way, and we need to look at it. So data is very important. It gives the evidence. And I think that from a pioneering institution, we have high expectations. I was glad that Mahila Mahavidyalaya was talked about, established by Panditji in 1929. And this synthesized at that point the idea of modern scholarship. And today, almost 200 years, almost 100 years later, we need to talk about contemporary modern scholarship and what should be the multifaceted skills that women have to be given, and that they have to work shoulder to shoulder, men and women, girls and boys together. So how do we redefine, reboot our entire system? And I cannot but being here pay homage to the very distinguished alumni of the Mahila Mahavidyalaya, because whether it was Sucheta Kripalani or Rajendra Kumari Bajpai or Durgabai Deshmukh, they have played a very, very important role in independence movement and creating processes for the independent country. And again, you have very distinguished alumni, but you know how difficult it was for me to find the distinguished alumni. And that is something you please take note of, that why are we not showcasing the work of those who have passed through the portals of such a distinguished institution. Kapila Vatsayan, who passed about a year and a half back, or Veena Mojumdar, who produced the first report towards equality and established the Center for Women Development Studies, or Ved Kumari Ghai, who's a Sanskrit scholar and academic, they need to be celebrated. And on a more personal note, I want to talk about Manu Bhandari, who's a BHU alumni, but who came in and was served at Miranda House for a lifetime. And she was one of the pioneers of the Nai Kahani movement, a literary movement for New India. And men and women together brought a new discourse, a new narrative, new debates, new opinions, new points of views. And so BHU has must to take pride of, and just like that, you know, we take her as our own. And you would know her for her story, Aapka Banti, which was made into a remarkable film. So I, thought it fit to bring her in. Or when you have Girija Devi. But these are people from social sciences, humanities, the field of performing arts and all. What about the sciences? And I must say that it is so good that Professor Agarwal has just been awarded the J.C. Bose National Fellowship by SERB. And I could find at least 3 women on searching through your websites and so on. And, you have a women scientist awardee and you have a dean. There may be other deans, but also when professorial level is so rare, then they're not enough women. So you need to celebrate the achievements of the women, the scientists, the innovators, the scholars, and that's important. And taking on from here, why is it that we do not have as many sterling, spectacular success stories of women in science as we have for social sciences and humanities, or in performing arts? This is a question. So the World Economic Forum report shows us that the share of women in people in culture could be as much as 85%. But when we look at the emerging and disruptive technologies, data and AI is hardly 30%, and cloud computing is down to 12%. But the jobs of the future are going to be in these areas. So we have to see how to enhance the women's participation in these areas. And if you were also look at the world of work, then women are unequal at work. In India, there was hardly 30% participation in 1990, which is now down to 21% due to pandemic in 2021. And women do as much as 6 times more unpaid caregiving work. This does impact their professional participation. So how many years would it take us to achieve gender parity? The World Economic Forum puts this as overcoming the overall gender gap would take us 136 years. And the large number is because the lack of political participation and economic participation of women that may take close to 300 years to overcome. But somehow the education field we've done well. And while last year we thought in 12 years we will have gender parity, due to pandemic now it's 14 years. But what is the quality of this particular education attainment? It could be basic literacy, primary, and so on. In higher education across the field, women are outperforming and are coming in larger numbers at PhD level, but yet, as we can see, statistics says there's a long way to go before they find a place or foothold in the workplace and niche jobs in this. So can we ignore the potential of women? That is the question. With equal educational attainment, it is very, very important that women should become equal participants in the progression of science and technology and the country on the whole. And this is where GATI derives its strength. So before I move forward, I do want to introduce these terms which you would be familiar with, but often these are not used in a correct, in their essence. Equity, diversity, inclusion is the new mantra for the new century. We are talking exceedingly about these. Equity is, unlike equality, talking about making the playing field equal, giving equal, equitable opportunity to all. And that is important for success of all, including women. Diversity, on the other hand, is talking about participation of underrepresented groups in the workforce, and that again includes women. An institution through affirmative action today may have a diverse workforce because, we have reservations, etc., for underrepresented social groups, but it may yet lack inclusion. What is inclusion? Inclusion really is talking about giving a sense of belonging to all the stakeholders or members of a community in any institution. You may have equity, you may have diversity, but yet people may feel marginalized. They may feel that they are not welcome in that institution at individual level or as a group or as a cohort. So gender within these poses a very special challenge. So it becomes extremely important to develop a diversity intelligence. It is a moral imperative because the quality of an institution ultimately depends on its capacity to create opportunities and valuable experiences for growth of all. And this means men and women, girls and boys, all from any background. It is important that the institution develops this sense of what it means to be diverse, and it meets the inclusion challenge, which is that it must develop, everyone must have a sense of identity and belonging, a sense of community. So important, because I have always said in my institution, and I get 70-80% students from across the country representing demographic profile of the country. Many are first education learners, bilingual, they do not have a command on English language or even Hindi for that matter, but they have made it to the top college of the country based on their aspirations and the merit, meeting 100 on 100 score as an entrance criteria. And they are financially challenged. They may come from any social, economic, religious group. So they have an identity that is their background identity. But overlaying on that identity, we put another identity, university being a great equalizer, that is an identity of the institution. So going forward, you develop this very, very important identity that helps you to succeed in life, that helps you to achieve at the level of the kind of distinguished alumni that I am talking about. So this is important. For gender in particular, inclusion or a sense of belonging has always been a challenge. It's so in society, it is more so in professional spaces, whether it is recruitment, it is advancement, or it is awards and recognition, whether it is issues of safety and dignity at work. Women do face many challenges. They experience a lot.
There seems to be a network problem. Please bear with that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Should I proceed?
Yeah, please.
So this is a challenge that needs to be looked at in a very, very careful way. And that is implying that institutions need to develop, in addition to diversity intelligence, specifically a gender intelligence, and be able to handle the kind of problems or understand and unravel them. We all know there is harassment at workplace. We know there is discrimination, and there is a lot of unconscious bias. So inequitable workplaces are an issue of concern. And there are always the socialization of males or networks of males. We experience it when we go for conferences and so on, that even when you are part of a big group, you may want to go home early because you have responsibilities at home, or even when you're there, women tend to cluster separately, the men separately. So how do we break these kind of barriers? Because institutions can only grow based on trust and confidence and collaboration and networking of both male and female at a professional level. So these gender issues must be addressed explicitly in professional development programs, and very specific dedicated orientation and sensitization programs need to be developed. So one of the most important things, and I'm glad that this Women's Day theme happens to be about overcoming bias. Bias and is what prevents us from addressing many of the problems. We need to have a growth mindset. So the first step towards gender equity is being aware of the kind of unconscious bias that we bring along with us in any realm of life. And both men and women have these unconscious bias. Females also may have very stereotypical understanding of their own role in professional spaces. And these play out in a very, very sometimes unintended, but sometimes in explicit ways. And wherever bias exists, it's a matter of concern and reflection and action. So it is almost like a compiled computer program, and without really, going into the detail, we just run it. And we come to quick decisions. So I do suggest that you should look at how individuals think fast and think slow. And in thinking fast, we arrive at very, very wrong conclusions sometimes, or inadequate thinking has gone into it. And so a concerted effect is required to think slowly through where we are going wrong in being judging and so on. So upholding the national laws is a moral imperative for institutions. They have the Sustainable Development Goals. There's also the international laws on equality. But our country has in our constitution really told us, we have a right to equality. We have, all of us, a right to life with dignity and a right against discrimination. So this is really where it is constitutionally mandated, and so gender included. And in recent times, because the needle has not moved that much, the UGC has explicitly brought in and made it mandatory for addressing sexual harassment head on. So these are the kind of frameworks within which we are working. It becomes important for an institution, and more so for an old institution founded on the principle of equality, to bring about gender mainstreaming. And gender mainstreaming is about looking at gender, any policy, all day-to-day functioning processes and procedures through the gender lens. And this is something that will require a lot of time and is one of the important foci of GATI. So mainstreaming is not simple because it involves communities, it involves individuals, it involves institutional structures, and these gears only will move in tandem to bring about transformative change, and the output is very, very important. So institutional structures at policy level need to be modified. They will have to engage all members of the community with well-deliberated actions towards gender equality so that transformative changes of gender mainstreaming are visible. And as I've already said, the problem is complex because institutions and communities are gendered social settings. And this process often has to be top down and bottom up, and that is there. So with these understandings, we have created what is called the GATI Charter, 10 key principles. And this has been given to you as part of the Gender Equity Framework and the Guidance Handbook, and its summary is there. I urge Professor Agarwal to share this widely with all members of the community because details are important. The Vice Chancellors have all signed and are committed to upholding the Charter principles, but please give it wide publicity. I feel that at individual level, every member of the university community should be a signatory to the Charter. And that is the only way by which we will be able to integrate the principles of the gender equity in the institutional strategic vision, and every member will become a partner as we go along the Charter journey. So, as was said, it is a self-assessment and accreditation process. Incidentally, NAC is just providing me administrative support while I'm working on GATI, and it is not related to the NAC assessment accreditation process in any which way. But following, but if we were to launch it for the whole country, obviously that would be the right organization to take it forward on scale, given there are 50,000 odd colleges and 1,000 plus universities and institutions of, self-standing institutions, standalone institutions. So this assessment framework is evidence and data-based. We nudge you to analyze and examine policies and processes and identify impediments and barriers and lacunae, and on the basis of that, develop action plans. Over this duration of just 18 months, it's not going to be able to, you won't be able to do smart action plans, which are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. But what you can certainly do is have relevant actions and plans and implement them, because incremental change will become the disruptive change that we are looking forward to. And you have GSAT, which is the GATI self-assessment team, and it's a steering group, and Professor Agarwal and her team leading this particular thing. So the indicator framework that is being created is very, very structured. It has 7 dimensions. Usually the self-assessment process is not evaluated because it is the foundation on which other criteria are going to rest. However, this is a community-based project, so we want that GSAT should document the entire self-assessment process and its functioning through its task groups and satellite teams, and that record is going to be very important as we scale up in our mission. And obviously, it will include gender statistics, synoptic view of the institution, but far more important, issues of advancement, career progression, and leadership. Like I said, female talent is not getting opportunities. We are knocking on the doors. So how can we open the portals as welcoming places where women can also craft successful careers? And as I said, gender mainstreaming would entail looking at policies, processes, procedures, and practices through the gender lens. Far more important is climate and organizational culture. I'll have more to talk about it. But all institutions already have a wonderful set of values. As I said, equity should be hardwired in the DNA of BHU right from its inception. You have many best practices and case studies, so we would like to hear about that. And I began by finding your own alumni that you can showcase and their work, and they can be role models. And then developed strategies and actions which can be integrated in your strategic vision. And this is what the GATI framework is about. And this is its charter journey, which began in August. You were selected from 148 institutions. You are one among the 30. Vice Chancellor has committed to upholding the GATI Charter principles, but every member of the community should do the same. The framework has been shared with you way back in August. GSAT has been operative since then. Orientations have taken place from us as well as from the UK partners, and now you should be at data collection, analysis, reflection, and then moving towards submitting application by end of October, moving towards recognition and award. But let me say that I have provided the backbone of the GATI framework through 7 criteria. It is a structure, but it's not a numbers game about collecting data. It is a complex, non-linear problem, and it is your opportunity to review policies and make sense of what the data is telling you, the story behind it, examine patterns and interpret it, connect the dots with the larger picture, and develop actions for sustainable change that go beyond the 18-month charter journey. And you are best equipped because as a self-learning organization with so much talent, it should be something, once you are committed towards change and transformation, you can be agents of change, you can be the change. And this is how we move. So gender climate is what the focus of GATI really is. And this is determined by perceptions and expectations of the community. It is determined by the interactions between staff, student, administration, leadership. And it is provides a mirror to how the community perceives the policies and programs and plans of the institution. So this kind of a perception, it's a perception, it's an individual perception or a group perception. It impacts the day-to-day functioning of the institution. And obviously, our perceptions will also be colored by our own background, but certainly they get impacted by hierarchical structures, the infrastructural facilities, the resource allocation, and the day-to-day professional and social interactions. So an institution must elevate its gender climate so that it works in a fair, transparent, accountable manner. While the climate perception can change from morning till evening, if my application is not signed in time, I can run down the institution. Nothing moves in this institution. But if by evening it comes back to me, I will say, oh my God, just see, within 4 hours my work was done. But we have to have a high baseline and of support structures through our well-imagined policies and well-oiled machinery. Culture, on the other hand, is a far more complex thing. And this is what individual members of the community bring as their own value systems. And a lot of effort, we know, goes in altering the beliefs that individuals have, whether they're social, religious, political, and in any other format. And to have a growth mindset is important. But what is important is whatever may be my individual belief system, once we are a part of a enlightened community, we are part of a prestigious institution, then the values of the system will define our identity. And we have a constitutional obligation, a moral imperative to uphold the organizational culture and its values and contribute towards making it as a place where everyone gets an opportunity for advancement. The assessment model is one of action research methodology. Those in medical schools know it rather well. You have any focal area, you collect data, which by data I mean both evidence that is quantitative and qualitative. You analyze and reflect on it, and based on that, you ideate, you add, and refine your actions. And this is an iterative loop. It is always a work in progress because problems of society never stay solved. And that's why it's a goldmine area. But in this limited journey, we hope that this will train the community to look in a very concerted manner and do that. You know that women and men have gendered experiences. There's a lot of research that shows that a large number in comparison to men also face gender discrimination at work, but about 50% women always have felt some discrimination at work. And they earn far less, as and they are passed over for important assignments. They're often treated as not being competent. They feel isolated at work. They have sexual harassment experiences, and they are discriminated in recruitment, hiring, and promotions. Men also say that, but at a far lesser frequency. And gender makes it harder to succeed at work. A woman has to work far more than a man to achieve the same. And obviously, work-life dynamics is always impactful, and it impacts the profession. So the same world viewed through the male eyes and the female perspective is very, very different. So we have to, as we go along, create personal value for each member of the community, male and female, staff and students. And breaking the status quo is going to be a challenge because many factors, as I've outlined so far, it's a complex problem. Each will impact the functioning and so on. So it is important to see what are the tools for transformation. Many institutions, take pride that, oh, we are gender blind, we are gender agnostic, it doesn't matter whether the person in front of us is a male, female, boy, or a girl. But that is not going to help because certainly the stereotypes and inequalities have persisted for many, many years. And if we are gender blind, we forget that women and females of the community carry a societal burden. They have family caregiving responsibilities. They're primary caregivers, and we cannot be blind to that need. Institutions sometimes take pride that, yeah, we are gender aware, we are gender accommodating. Okay, the meeting is going on, and a female colleague says, I've got to go and pick up a child, or I have work at home, somebody is sick. They'll say, okay, you can go, the meeting will continue. You're short-circuiting the female out of that system of professional engagement, and you are congratulating yourself by being accommodating. On the other hand, we have to create such mechanisms that you don't have late night meetings or social gatherings or dovetailing a professional meeting so that nobody is left out. And when nobody is left out, the institution is responsive to the specific personal individual needs of the stakeholders as far as possible. And that is when you are able to overcome stereotypes, barriers, and challenges and bring in changes that are going to be long lasting. So gender responsive environments will be very critical for creating a better gender climate and organizational culture and achieving the goal of gender equity. So holistic understanding of the individual is important even in the workplace so that everybody can contribute in a good way. So all this will require building a community of practice, which is really talking about developing shared goals, values, and understanding, evolving a common vocabulary. My talk so far is trying to emphasize how important it is for us to understand the nuances the finer nuances of the vocabulary when we speak of gender equity. And we need to have a shared social cultural practice and strategy. We have to, through the process of social learning, develop new knowledge systems, new tools and techniques and competencies. Today's world, we all know that more than in the classroom or the institution, the social processes of learning are very, very important. And this is how, through peer networks and collaborative work, we all learn far better. And once we have these understanding, we are part of the solution, not part of the problem. We can then create evidence-based solutions. So identify a domain or a focal problem, build a community and build a practice related to it. And that is the journey towards change, transformation of institutions. So by a community, I don't mean the entire campus community. It begins with, for a given problem, maybe somebody who's organizing a conference and a team of 10, that is a community. It has a focal problem. So you say that I will not have any panel where women don't have equal representation, or let us say proportionate representation. So you have a common value system and understanding of how conferences, etc., should be organized, and so on. Or you create a committee to create a set of rules, then that must first evolve a common understanding. It becomes a community, and then it develops a policy or a practice. So these become spiraling and growing circles of influence. And finally, you know, the satellite teams, the task forces and small communities, they expand till everybody has a common way of doing things, and institutions develop a new identity, which is a far bigger identity than that of a small task group or committee or a satellite team or a department and so on and so forth. It is the value system and way of doing things, and our own vocabulary defines that. And this is what we mean by identity of an institution. So that is important. So that said, actually, I have explained the entire philosophy behind the GATI framework. It goes beyond data. And now I will very quickly go through the various criteria. As I've said, the self-assessment process itself is very important. It will document the entire charter journey and steer the process towards submission of the application for recognition. And it will involve looking at your strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and challenges, looking at the reliability and validity of the data that you will bring in, and the strength and weaknesses and opportunities and challenges will be very, very important. So I just very quickly, I think I've lost one slide. I'd like to talk about that. How do we develop this understanding of the community? We can only do it through interviews, anecdotes, stories, and narratives. We have to develop this credible community engagement. So reviews, surveys, structured feedback, town hall meetings, discussion debates, sessions such as this will be important. Far more important is what is whispered in the ear. What are the anecdotes, the stories, the narratives that women and men both are telling us? Because herein lies a deep understanding of what is the climate and what is the culture of the institution. So these processes must be an integral part of what the GATI team is doing. And without that, it's not going to be easy to move forward. So the storyline is very important. And give visibility to GATI and its charter. This could also have been tweeted. This should have been part of your website. Engage with the community and build a community, as I have talked about, and have a growing circle of allies and stakeholders so that no one is left behind. Everybody has a sense of belonging in this charter journey, and important. Since evidence and data has to be managed, various sources exist. Create, it's an advanced university and leverages IT and data sciences. So develop information management and communication system, have a GATI website and a database, and very important to have gender disaggregated data records. You know, I have spent many, many hours, and so has my team, in unraveling your data from NRF and from ASHE or from your website, And I know the challenges that are there. And you need to systematize maintenance of resource materials and update and maintain this data. And because that is the underpinning requirement in policy making, and it is very critical that we get this right. So the easy part of the assessment accreditation is the kind of data that is there. For an outsider, it was a little more work, but inside you have many sources, so you know what are your numbers and timeline trends in STEM and non-STEM domains. And those sources are like ASHE, that's why I deliberately shared that with you, or NIRF, or your annual reports and the entire administrative process. So they should be members of GSAT who are able to access these data sources rather well. But as I said, quantitative data is the easy part of the assessment. The qualitative data is far more difficult and far more challenging, but far more interesting, because this is telling us what is the spirit of the institution, and that's important. But as I said, this is the data that you can have from EOI. I've already given it to you and just bringing more. But if I look across the various departments, this was a bit more challenging to get, but here we are. And you can see that the orange, the number of females in various disciplines is rather, faculty is very, very low. Look at physics. I mean, this is far lower than the kind of national averages and so on. So while you may show 18% women overall, but there's certain disciplines, and very strangely that life sciences being so female-centric up to PhD, we have this corroborates what one has said, that there are not enough women when we come to higher in jobs and so on. And even in the Mahila Mahavidyalaya, if we were to look at the details, we will see that the number of women is far more, of course, but they could be better in many other areas. And in any case, today, contemporary education requires men and women together, each for equal. That is the generation equality, and so on. But by contrast, the non-science departments have a larger number of women. So this is the kind of data that you can look at the story, but this is the easy part of it. Even an outsider like me can bring it up in half a day, and so on. What is far more important is the policies for gender recruitment, advancement, career progression, and leadership. So we want to have equal opportunity at recruitment, good induction policies, and handhold so that all people feel comfortable as they are going up, and for professional development and progression. So this is something that is very, very important and critical. So if you were to look at the pipeline of the academic pipeline, and I lost one earlier slide in this process, but this should be good enough. Then if you look at those who are wanting a job in the academia, they enter as at PhD or as an early career researcher. There is need to increase that inflow. And that can happen through specifically designed outreach programs and having enough women role models and making it and announcing it as a welcoming institution for women in particular. For early career researchers, a group that I personally am very keen that they should benefit the maximum from GATI, you need to have career support resources, training and mentoring, because survival of the academic community necessitates that the young who we train with so much of toil, so much of effort, they should be well placed. Their aspirations should really be fostered, and they should fructify with jobs somewhere in the country. Not necessarily, maybe it is a policy, not necessary. We should have inbreeding. That can be detrimental. But equivalent jobs should be there across the country so that your alumni makes a mark and carries your best practices to other institutions and so on. So women in particular face a lot of challenges and bias as they move from early career to assistant posts or associate professors and all. So the flow has many vortices for women in the academic pipeline. So we need to have several aspects. There has to be gender balanced selection processes and obvious bias training, mentoring, equal opportunities with startup grants at induction time, funding for research, and advancement opportunities through research at this level, and resources for special programs. But to enhance female capacity for collaborating and developing networks, and to recognize them. As I said, this becomes very important, and not enough professors and not enough researchers in the female cohort get these opportunities. So we need to get right the recruitment process and a nuanced understanding of how to overcome bias. You don't need to read everything here, but it is really a summary of what I've been saying, and to enhance the talent pool. So how we put the language of the advertisement for prospective faculty is very important. Just adding a line that we specially welcome women candidates can make all the difference, because women will go by the number of faculty existing in the institution, and they will hesitate to apply because they will have a foregone conclusion, oh, I will never be taken by that institution. So we need to overcome those things. And in today's world, looking at the concept of spousal applicants and dual hiring becomes very, very important, and so on. At appraisal and development review, mentoring becomes important, because whether you promote someone or don't, you need to share what and the reasons are. So institutions are accountable, and a mentoring can always help so that the success rate is high and the level of satisfaction is high. Most of us are left a little wanting. We do not feel satisfied when we go for appraisals and interviews endlessly. So some feedback is very, very important. And this is institutional support always enhances performance, and everyone is looking for recognition and inspiration in this process. So do look at your policies in this regard, and so on. And as I said, training and capacity building for professional skills and competencies, the soft skills, communication skills is important. In today's world, the technological things are very important. A new faculty needs pedagogical support. They need handbooks on what are the administrative processes. Everyone needs to have financial literacy and skills for financial management, because resource management is what all researchers have to do. So these are the kind of gender mainstreaming thrust areas that you must really focus on, and this all goes beyond the data. To increase the number of women in decision-making committees, especially when there's so few women, there have to be some affirmative actions. And women also are frequently hesitant. They just don't want to get into what they call the cesspool of the top leadership or politics of it. And we have to help them overcome the hesitancy. Leadership training has to be provided, and policy initiatives for equity have to be there. Very frequently, if I were to look at the IITs, there's no woman there in the governing board. So why should the woman's voice not be there? The female could be co-opted, and so on. And same way in the top deanships for huge universities, room has to be made for the female voice, and so that in sufficient manner, women can participate in the decision-making and leadership roles. Much more critical is the policies and processes that support work-life dynamics. And as I said, we are social creatures, and we have gendered social backgrounds. So it is very, very important that the institution has a welfare in mind. It provides the infrastructure facilities and has dignity at work as its foremost concern, and also has fairness in allocation of resources through mainstreaming processes in audits, reviews, and resources. So please look at all your institutional processes, the work-life dynamics. I don't think balance is a good word, but it is frequently used. So I use it here just to provide the contrast. Very frequently, even in a family, sometimes we do 100% of the work, sometimes 90% of the work is done by the male and 10% by the female, and then the role reversal. 10% will be done by the male and 90 by this, because the situation is dynamic and it decides how things will take place. But look at the well-being with safety, security, infrastructure being important. I will speak a little bit more on the dignity at work today. And I will speak on the concept of the new age, the myth of two worlds, the two cultures. Today, the pandemic has shown us that, with us working anytime, anywhere. But for many, many years now, if I look at myself, I don't have a distinction between work and non-work. Those of us who are passionate about our professions or research or just knowledge seekers, and today with the kind of the knowledge networks and learning even through social medias and all, the distinction between work and non-work has vanished. And we have seen that working anytime, anywhere, 24/7 in virtual and hybrid modes is giving to us a very different character. We are juggling roles, both male and female members, multiple responsibilities. We have many, many interests. We have many needs. So roles are evolving. How fair is it and how prevalent is it that we should go to the family model of the male as a breadwinner and the female as a homemaker? You need to look at it in a top institution of the country. Perhaps the dual career couples are redefining the norms of work-life dynamics. Fathers are increasingly engaged. Male members are breaking the stereotypes of what is male behavior, and we need to showcase. So GATI must look at gender, must really give the male voice a chance. Males must be projected as being progressive and as being equal partners and being engaged in this process. So this is not just a women-dominant charter and so on. So policy expectations for the new age families is also changing. Perhaps the new norms and regulatory mechanism may want parental leave. Parents both are equally responsible for child care or for care responsibilities for the elderly, and both may have need for flexi time. And therefore, with equitable family and care responsibility as a new way of looking at things, you can bring a leading edge. You can be on the leading edge of societal transformation. So we want GATI top institutions to lead societal change through these kind of initiatives. So please look at and hear the men's voices and promote them as being engaged members of society, and not that there's no blame gaming going on here, that the discrimination and stereotypical roles of women are only because of men. That has to change. Then let BHU be on the leading edge of that change, because it is what is ingrained in your, it is etched in your DNA, women and men being equal from 1917. Walk that talk. So create gender responsive infrastructure. You already have that. You have many hostels. You have, you're reading much, but it can always be improved. Not really talking much about that, but it's important. But dignity at work, I want to talk about. Sexual harassment, you already have a committee. Anti-bullying has become very important. And let me then selectively give a few illustrative examples. Very recently, papers have been full in Delhi with a 16-year-old school student being harassed by senior students and committing suicide. And any form of harassment and bullying, UGC precludes that. There has to be zero tolerance on that, because it has a life-lasting impact on productivity and the well-being of individual, and it impairs sense of belonging. So it damages the self-image. So having very strong zero tolerance policies on bullying and harassment is very, very critical. It needs to be looked at. The policy may be there, but how well is it being implemented is important. And that's important. Cyber safety, risk cyber, right? There's the dark side of the cyber world, and we need to look at the social manifestations of it. This has also been very much in the news with, some strange name apps and just unacceptable things that have been going on. And gender equity, both male and female, require that our young population should be responsible users of the cyber world and be aware of the risks, and strong policy interventions are required, and an understanding is necessary. And this has to be a strong policy. Another policy which is completely missing in institution is a policy on personal relationships. Now, institutions are places where built on trust and confidence. Male and females have to work together right from school into the workplace. I can count only, my mentors have been great professors, all male. And the trust and confidence has helped me to grow and evolve. And much of the learning was beyond the classroom. Sometimes abuse of hierarchical position occurs, and this erosion of trust and confidence, and what should be elevated professional relationship is pushed on the path of an intimate relationship. When it is a conflict of interest and erosion of trust and confidence, there should be a strong policy against any such behavior between staff and students, because the domino effect can be terrible. Recently, Michigan University paid $450 million to hundreds of male and female students who were abused by a male physician in a sports complex. And the gentleman died early in the century, but it took about more than a decade and a settlement of 450 millions, and the reputation of the university was compromised. Again, in the Harvard University case in anthropology, you are seeing that it can jeopardize the reputation of a great institution. However, that said, sometimes a genuine affection moving towards intimacy can develop because people are working closely. In that case, the policy must define an institutional policy and responsibility that, for the sake of other members of the community or the class, and maybe in the PhD group, should be mandatory disclosure of intimacy. And then checks and balances can be created so that professional segregation happens, and alternate arrangements are made with a co-guide. If it's highly specialized, no one else can be found, or otherwise a new supervisor takes over. So maintaining higher standards is a moral imperative, especially in the code of conduct of this, and upholding the professional integrity so that especially the female members feel comfortable, and they are beneficiaries of the best possible mentorship that will take them to highest echelons of professional performance. So a student grievance redressal cell, I'm sure you already have it, will be very, very important. That brings me to how you will unravel gender climate and organizational culture. Has to be through surveys, etc. It has to be also strengthened through student curriculum enrichment and orientation and diversity sensitization. You have to develop both diversity and gender intelligence. Gender issues can be brought into curriculum and research, and feedback should become, and surveys should become part of any classroom, of any society work, of any activity that we do. And today it is so easy, anyone can make a Google form and have it on the mobile, and you can do this. So sensitization programs you're already doing, and I've already talked about promoting the role of women in science. You already have many, many distinguished alumni, but do something for the schools and other colleges, and promote outreach and engagement activities. An important part is to include gender in every research. Because it is widely recognized the world is not designed for women. The airbag is not designed for women physiology. There were not enough spacesuits designed for women physiology. So a group of women astronauts could not undertake a spacewalk just for the lack of enough spacesuits. A piano is not designed for women, and women are more likely to be injured while playing, or a heart attack may not be recognized for women because not enough research has been done on female of the species. And in research, only male animals are often targeted. And in European Union, actually, Project Hope does not allow for sanction of grants unless the gender component of that research, where pertinent, is also highlighted. So since the medical students are here, I do think it's very, very important that research should incorporate the gender component in a very big way, and special incentivization should be given for catching up on that kind of research. And it's important. So research on gender, as happens in social sciences, humanities, is important, and also the other way, gender in research is important. So let us say, therefore, that feedback-based institutional transformation is what GATI is all about. You'll have to determine the organizational culture, for which you need to understand social culture in small groups and at individual level. You will need to understand the work culture, how it is impacted by work-life dynamics, what kind of support and flexibility institutions can provide, and to enhance collaborations and networks. You'll have to also look at professional training, mentoring, growth opportunities. You'll have to look at hierarchy. What kind of hierarchies exist within the institutions, and strengthen them so that faculty mentor-mentee relationships are strengthened, personal relationships are strengthened, and are built on trust and confidence. And this will impact your gender climate and organizational culture. The canvas for this kind of transformation is huge in our kind of liberal education systems. Central universities and colleges such as ours, such as mine. So you have so many seminar, conferences, workshops, maybe 10 a day, and you have societies and clubs, you have NCC, NSS, you have so much of extramural and so on. Each is a community, and each of these can develop a practice that will strengthen GATI. So there is scope for doing quite a lot as we move forward. And then lastly, showcase your best practices and case studies. While we are asking maybe two each of some narratives which will show your affirmative actions, etc., or gender responsiveness of the environment, create a whole book on it, because there's so many voices, so many narratives, so many anecdotes. The Nai Kahani, as was pioneered by at BHU. So this is the नई कहानी that गति एक नई कहानी रचेगी, और आप सबको उसके आप किरदार हैं, आप सबको वो लिखना है, और वो जब आप लिखेंगे तो बाकी देश पढ़ के आगे बढ़ेगा. So it is very important that you do that and create at the end of your application 2.5 year achievable action plans, and 1.5 year achievable action plans, and 2 action plans that can be achieved over 3 years. So these are what will have to be assimilated in your culture and climate, because Gati is not going to end after 18 months. It has to be sustained throughout the lifetime of an institution, which is really eternal. And the way forward is just that. And as I said, it will always be a work in progress, because social dynamics is such that new age contemporary needs will define how problems surface and how they're addressed. So be the change, lead the change, and we'll be very happy to learn from BHU. I personally and my team are very grateful to you that we are here, and we'll be here available to you 24 hours, because for us it is a mission, and we would like BHU to be right on the top, leading the change as the oldest institution. So for a summary, I hope Gati will catalyze change. You will develop a shared vocabulary that is one of diversity, gender, intelligence, and change mindsets, be of growth mindset, and overcome obvious bias. Uphold the national statutory constitutional obligations on affirmative action, diversity, and inclusion, the right to equality, and right against discrimination in any form. Develop good policies with oversight mechanisms in gender budgeting for mainstreaming purposes. Look at affirmative actions. Develop a atmosphere, environment, ecosystem of trust and confidence, accountability and transparency. And remember that Gati is not a deficit model. We're not here to punch holes that this is a barrier and impediment, this is not happening, that's not happening. Gati is forward-looking. You are on the leading edge of change, and we want to celebrate all that is wonderful in BHU, and that is a best practice for global sharing. So you are a critical actor, a change maker, an agent of change. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I have a long story to tell, and I needed an hour, as I told you, because it's not possible for me to capture all the nuances, and not easy for me to come too frequently as well. But as I said, I'm available 24 hours, any day, and this is our journey, and we want to showcase the best at BHU and move towards it. So grateful thanks to Priyanka. What would I do without this brilliant team? And Priyanka has been with us throughout this journey, and Rosa as well, and the contribution is tremendous. And Aisha has joined more recently. But you know, it's always difficult in these areas to form teams that are stable and will be there. But we are pretty stable at this moment. And thank you, everyone. We'll be very happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, madam. It was really um, a talk which has opened us our eyes, who has given us directions that how to move forward and what to be done actually to achieve the things in the real sense for the gender advancement. So I now invite questions. So first raise a hand I have shown from Professor Lalita Batta. Do you want to ask some question, Dr. Professor Lalita?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Good
Oh,
morning.
yes, please continue.
Good morning, ma'am. It was really a very good session, and I've learned a lot. But I have one or two queries. Number one is this: that when you initially presented data of women's participation in various science fields, I was not able to see the name of my department, that is home science. Though UGC has considered home science under science faculty, but the department was not there. So, and second, agriculture faculty was also not there because ICR data shows that they have a very good gender participation. A good number of female employees are being employed by ICAR, Indian Council of Agriculture Research. But they have a different agriculture, they are running different agriculture universities in all over India, and we can get a very good data from there, a good participation. And third thing is this, that ma'am, that you have shared in a that gender initiatives, like you have categorized into 4 categories: well-being and so on. And in a slide you shows that for women they are universities and institution and government is giving childcare leave, maternity leave. But ma'am, I have a little submission, because childcare leave and maternity leave are not particularly for women, they are to upbringing a child. It is not to celebrate a womanhood, because women have their own challenges like periods, like menopause. These are the stages when she actually needs their time. A few of the cases are really very challenging, they need break. In the menopause phase especially, it goes from 1 year to 5 year in women. There must be some provision of some kind of leave or facilities for women employees these days, and which should be given consideration or submitted as a proposal to the government. Thank you.
So thank you very much. You know, I think I've been very successful in nudging you towards appropriate policies. Now, the fact that home science is not included, like I told you, it's not my task to present your data. I brought some data as illustrative, that this is how you have to go through. And so it is your task to unravel your data and create a story out of that. I'm here only to nudge you, to provide some illustrative examples, but I'm really glad that it has raised this kind of me too. Our department too has to be part of this data. Why have I been left out? So I think in that sense, we've been hugely successful. I agree with you on agriculture. In fact, agriculture was the largest cohort in expression of interest application, 25. And I also serve on their one of their research advisory committees at NAM in Hyderabad. And I'm frequently invited to give talks, and I've been enjoying looking at agriculture and all. But I'll share 2 things with you. Way back, I mean, I'm not someone who's worked on gender studies or this or that. I've just been picked out and said, you have to do it. So I'm learning as I'm going along. But way back in late 80s, 90s, there was a professor of chemistry, and I'm going to tell you this story, it's important. And she just caught me in the corridor. She says, you're coming tomorrow with me to Himachal, we are going to Pantnagar, and we are going to do some survey of women in agriculture. So we went and we started looking at data and all. The largest number of women, if at all there were any, were in home science. And then we also collected data on extension activities. Now we all know from the hills, the men come down into the cities and, for jobs. And the females are left to look after the fields and the families, to fetch firewood from the forests and so on. But when the extension activities at that point were happening in the university was organizing those, the women came only for how to make fruit preservatives, jams, and so on and so forth, or pickles. They were not brought in for good agricultural practice, how to have better seeds, how to have rotation of crops, how to improve that agriculture. That was 1980s and 1990s. So women, where they have existed even in agricultural universities, please look at the details of which disciplines they predominate on, and whether the smart agriculture practices are coming to them. So in one of my talks, if I come again, I'll be very happy to share that with you. We looked at what is the women startups in agricultures, and so on, which is drones. Today, Republic Day, the drone show has led by a woman, Sarita Alawat. Women can do it all, but that becomes very important. So please do look at the agricultural institutions, and not just the numbers, but also fine detail of what is the share of these women in disruptive and emerging technologies, and how they can be nudged to move forward in the VUCA world. And that is important. So you are right. I will, sorry?
NAM is doing very good work in women in agriculture.
Right. So yes, so do look at all that, and I've just given you a flavor of that to answer your question. The third question is important. So we are not going into all the details of the policies that you can create. On maternity, childcare, maternity is given to all, but in childcare, there can be competing needs, because institutions have to have a policy on how leave is to be given. It's not easy in teaching institutions if no substitute is to be provided. So competing needs are often there. Policies have to be fine-tuned and so on. I agree with you that reproductive health and various stages of women's reproductive life require new challenges, but that is for you, therefore, to create best practices. We have given you an open this is exactly a nudge. We are giving you a blank slate. You come up with these policies. Many of our institutions had set up low-cost sanitary pad making machines. As part of Students in Free Enterprise, there were co-educational institutions, both girls and boys together, in a Delhi University College that won an international award for the work they did about female hygiene and menstrual practices and sanitary pads, etc. So nobody stops any institution for setting up these practices, and or to having wellness centers or resting places where women can go. So I think the canvas is blank. It is for you to bring in many, many best practices and implement them. Now, these kind of practices don't take too long to make. You just need, and you don't even need the top leadership to do so much. Your responsive top leadership would be very happy to okay it within as you blink, and you can establish these kind of practices. So there are formal practices, there are non-formal practices. Please do understand and create both formal and non-formal mechanisms. Care responsibilities, often elderly care, we help colleagues, but to have structures is very, very important.
Thank you, madam. I invite the questions from the other participants also. If any one of you have any question, please either raise your hand or ask directly.
Jaita Lahiri.
Yeah, sorry.
Any,
Yeah.
yes.
It's a great pleasure listening to you, ma'am, Pratibha ma'am, at any platform. So I am a assistant professor in Department of Physics. So I just want to inform you that you talked about the number of faculties in physics department. So actually, in the last hiring cycles, around 1.5 years ago, we actually 6 of us were hired in Department of Physics. So the numbers have gone up recently. So that's actually a positive sign. And my question is actually on something different. So previously, I was working in University of Hyderabad School of Physics, right? And we had a conference, Pressing for Progress, in 2019. You were, I think, part of the panel there also, right? So what and I am also an alumni of BHU. I did my master's around nearly 20 years ago. So when I was a student here in the hostels, ma'am, the entry time was around 8 o'clock. So we had to clock in by 8 in the evening. So, and I don't see that change at all in recent times. But when I was in Hyderabad, we didn't have such a system, right? So I want to know how prevalent is this kind of practice still in different organizations in India, and what can you do to change the mindset of the administrators about this? So if I can hear your comments on this.
Sure, Jayata, very nice to meet with you. And I'm not sure whether we interacted at the Hyderabad conference, but always a pleasure to see career progression of bright aspirational women such as you. So I'm really glad that you now have a job at physics. Now, as I said, the data we have presented, and always, people do latch on to data, but that's the easier part of the talk. The more nuanced aspects are about climate and culture and policies, which you have also raised. So we will depend only on the data that you provide through expression of interest application or NRF or ASHE or your website. And I've already pointed out that your data management system is very, very critical, so that there is almost an instantaneous update of anything new that happens, and accelerated university would be able to do a very good job on data science and incorporate AI and have gender disaggregated data, which is important. The country today is moved as one nation, one data. And I am sure that given your new leadership, you will see very robust systems come up very quickly. But this is something that it should be done. So somebody would be responsible for updating the website, making it more contemporary and of interest, because I know my own experience of how I could zero down onto, say, the physics homepage. It does not come from your main website and so on. So that said, congratulations, the 6 of you are hired. Now here is your opportunity to change the world and be a very powerful voice as a woman in STEM, and go beyond the university and encourage young students in schools and colleges to follow in your footsteps. And I hope that I'll have an opportunity one time to come and celebrate your achievements again, and we'll be in touch. Now, talking about the hostel rules. So residential campuses can do something differently. We were at IIT Roorkee yesterday. Last evening, we had a long session, and they have progressive policies. Many of the IITs have that. So Roorkee for 4.5 years has no time restriction and no space restriction. So women can go anywhere. Now, obviously, all this comes with a personal sense of responsibility and your own this thing. But institutions, I do agree, in today cannot have different rules. Now, this is easier said than done. In residential gated universities, it should be far easier to do. I have followed through newspapers, because I read newspapers. I have seen the controversies that have arisen BHU, and you have to find your own answers. You have to be the part of the solution of your own problem. No one from outside will understand and provide you those solutions. That's why I've said develop a common vocabulary and a sense of trust and confidence so that you can go forward. You have asked me what are the practices across the country. I'm not a repository of these kind of things, I have but as we go along, we will try to collate much of this, and if we are able to, with help of responsive people come to these conclusions, we would be quite helpful. But if I were to tell you, this is a problem even in my college, because what happens is that we do not have a gated university, and we have arterial roads of the city running right in front and behind the college, and institutions don't have the wherewithal that they can keep a mess running 24 hours, or they can keep track of students. So on their own responsibilities, adults, if students want to go out and be out for long, why not? Let them just, if they want to inform us, they should inform us. But if they, so by the time I superannuated, I said, if you want to tell us, good. If you don't want to tell us, that's fine. And when you ask them that, they actually want to tell you where they're going, so that there's someone who can help out in case of a crisis and so on. But these are difficult questions. Each institution has to find their own answer. We do know that the Pindra Tod movement did create a lot of, it nudged many institutions to relook at the hostel timings and so on and so forth. I agree, same set of rules for women and men, and no constraints and so on, and a trust and confidence, so that there is a lot of confidence in young women to go across the world anywhere, because ultimately in the workplace, I have traveled the whole world on my own for conferences, and I've been able to do so much more. When I was a growing up person, I never thought that I would do all that by myself, and I was able to do it. So foundational confidence has to be created. Create those soft skills to be able to negotiate and be on top of any crisis that arises. Those are the things that you can begin to do very, very quickly. And how to handle crisis is very, very important. Because, so let us say that Joyita is the next warden of the hostel, and she is in charge of finding a solution to this problem. And she is sensitive. She is looking at the best practices across the country and globally, and collectively, with all our help, we will solve the problem, and so on. So soft skills are very, very important. And we cannot turn a blind eye to the realities on the ground, because when things go wrong, institutional reputation is jeopardized. So first work on the climate and culture, so that it is one of trust, confidence, and without conflict of interest, and work on giving to the young women of your institution the kind of strength today I can say I have at the end of my career. It's been a long journey. It doesn't happen overnight. But how much will I risk my life is something that I only can answer for my own self. My decision-making skills, but I've traveled the whole world, and I do believe equality is very, very important. So put yourself in the leadership position and find the solution. That is GATI for you. Be the change maker.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
I hope the answer satisfies you. I have not skirted it, and I have not cornered you. I personally believe this because I was nudged to become the principal of a college, and I thought I'll be thrown out in 3 months because I'm a researcher. I don't have that kind of personal or intrapersonal skills. I'm happiest being in my room, in my study, and just working on my own. But each of us develops a public persona when the job is thrown at us. And I actually, trial by fire, bit by bit, you do become a change maker. Incremental changes become disruptive. And we all have to be partners. You can't leave it on your top leadership. Give to them an environment where it's easy for them to usher in the change, which goes therefore the responsibility of every girl and boy, man and woman on the campus to create trust and confidence that equal facilities and access to facilities can be given. It's a community problem. It is not a policy or leadership problem.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Professor Agarwal, would that satisfy you as an answer?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking you are speaking for so long time. There are some questions which are coming up with some very renowned colleagues I just have seen, but I think, you spoke for more than 1 hour and 40 minutes.
Okay.
And it is too much.
Okay, so the
So
talk
what we
was
will
not
do,
talk
if,
was 1 hour, but the questions have gone on. I'm available if you want the question answer to go on. Otherwise, we can close the meeting.
Yeah, so what I'm thinking that we will just collect some of the questions. We will collect some of the questions, and which are common, we will just
We
send
have
you.
one question, Professor Agarwal, from a male colleague. I'd be happy to take that on the end note.
Okay, no problem.
For equity.
On equity, if somebody wants to ask.
No. For male and female equity, I would
Okay.
love to hear a male colleague.
So maybe I will ask the male colleagues who are attending this to come forward for this question.
Actually, as hello, I'm audible.
Yes, Professor Shukla, you're audible.
Okay. Actually, the equity, we have seen the data which was presented in your presentation, and the data shows that equity and these are the two things which we need to look at. And regarding question, I can just see that the data says presents the disparity, especially the female colleagues, male colleagues, their involvement, their participations, and other aspects. So I think we need to work on these aspects probably in during this project as well as in the pilot project. If we can get some good suggestions from esteemed speaker like Dr. Pratibha Jolly, so definitely we can look at in the core team of that GSAT of GATI at BHU.
Thank you, Professor Shukla. Well, the data as it stands, and we know that recruitment does take time, there are processes and so on. And you may have already had certain recruitments. So there's a whole set of processes, and maybe those need to be revamped completely sometimes. So in the duration up to October, it is for the institution to see how that data can be influenced. But I don't think you'll move the needle drastically. It's not there. But what you can certainly do is look at all your policies. How does the what is the advertisement, the prospective faculty, how welcoming does it see the institution to be, what is the kind of gendered language that needs to be avoided, what is the constitution of the selection panel, right? The entire stage from scrutiny to shortlisting to this blind hiring policies have been very good. If you have tenured or tenure track kind of positions, then how can certain females be made more comfortable in that, and some form of guidance can be provided as well to increase their chances. Spousal hiring is another thing to look at, and so on. So there are so many elements to it. So those policy changes can come in, and bias training is a very, very critical part of it. And obviously sometimes professors on selection committees, they will say, oh, I know it, I'm not going to be behaving in a biased way. But actually what does happen is quite to the contrary. And institutions feel hesitant to say, have you read through our document on this and that? But the way we were able to create a template to go with EOI, where every director and vice chancellor signed on it, it was very positively put in, so that they actually endorsed the Gati Charter, or that is a community project, that they're happy to do it. So it was well worded. So even this letter of invitation going out to outside experts can be so framed that they become a part of a larger cause. And not obvious, it's not necessary always to explicitly tell people, do this, do that, do that. But you can, in your own behavior and the way you write out many of the things, elevate people to a moral high ground. And that is the way forward very frequently, but you can create modules. We'll also be doing that. So obvious bias training becomes important. Then I have talked about good induction policies. IITs have very good packages, and startup grants. And those can also come at transition points. They can come up, let us say, if look at the biological clock or the academic professional clock for women recruitment, because the potential of the woman is important. The biology and professional clocks interfere very frequently. They have family, they marry and have children just at the point where they're seeking a job. And so in the last 2-3 years, the publications may not be good, but before that, they may be superlative. The potential may be there to catch up when they are a little past the infant rearing stage and so on. So those can be looked at. And if somebody has gone on maternity leave and does not have a research grant, then it becomes a little difficult to catch up on research. So maybe the institution can provide buffer grants so that women can do that catching up. So how do you help at transition points is important in this work-life dynamics. So there are hundreds of things that institutions can do once you start thinking about it. But let me add that data is the least of the problem. It is your approach and commitment to that change that is important. Once that begins to reflect in the policies, numbers will automatically change. That's the way to go. We cannot just say, okay, I have to increase the numbers for the sake of GATI and, let me hire 2-3 people irrespective of merit or this or that and short circuit the process. It will be detrimental to the institution. So there are no shortcuts. You have to have foundational changes and I'm sure it'll happen. I hope it satisfies you.
Anyone else wants to ask anything? Or Madhulika madam, should I?
Yes. Yes, now you invite
okay.
for vote of
Um,
thanks.
Yes, I invite Professor Shukla for a formal vote of thanks for the lecture. Professor Shukla.
Okay, thank you, Professor Neelam, for conducting this session. And before I speak, first of all, I thank our esteemed speaker, Dr. Pratibha Jolly, for agreeing to our request and making this session very fruitful and very conductive. I also thank Honorable Vice Chancellor, BHU, under whose directions and motivations we are working. We Institute of Science and Dean Institute of Science, including our GATI Nodal Officer, Professor Madhulika Agrawal. My thanks are to the GSAT core team comprising all the members of the university, students of MMV, students of CIMS, students of IMS, and Institute of Science, all the students together. A special thanks to Dr. Manjari Gupta, DST CIMS, for organizing whole this session and including the design of brochure, circulating it, YouTube, so many things she has done. So we are thankful to all those who have participated, and many thanks to all for making it fruitful. Thank you very much. Over to Professor Neelam.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Thank you very much, madam, for giving such a nice talk. We hope that we will be again able to listen you next time.
Thank you so much. My personal thanks to Dr. Jolly.
No, thank you so much.
Really, very scintillating talk. We could understand the processes and all that, and I'm happy that you have elaborated it. There is only one talk, and you have cleared all the things. So that is why we just kept one talk. It's not, others also is speaking in between, and I'm sure my colleagues have a lot of questions. And in fact, when questions were asked, I could see that that's from different age group, right from some very early career, like Jaita, she joined here just 1.5 years back, and So even Dr. Lalita, she has come from somewhere else, and joined this university 2-3 years back. And even Dr. Shukla, who was asking about gender equity, he has come from somewhere else. So the best part is that they have experience of other institutions also, and they will able to compare, the situations over here, and we may go back and look into what we can really do. Another very important thing which I just want to tell you, madam, that we have in this university already started working on these aspects. Now in each and every committee, there is a representation of a female in all committees. That has been started. Another very good thing which has happened, that university has got a fund of for making hostels for 2,000 girl students. 2,000. And this has happened, in last 2 months, since, our Vice Chancellor, Professor Jain, joined over there. So he was right. Especially girl students, they used to, they are not getting accommodation on hostel. However, there were many boys hostels, so they were getting accommodation at least 80%. But the girls were only getting 40 to 50%. So it's going to be a real good thing, which is happening. And I will tell you that one of the GSET members, she has been made convener to look into all the female washrooms of this university and what things are needed over there. So we just want to tell you that few things which have been started after getting this GATI pilot project. So it's going to be a real change. I'm also not expecting a big change, but if even if it is a 1-2 step, I will be really satisfied with that also. And we will look forward for your guidance and the guidance from DST always.
Thank you so much, Professor Agarwal. My personal
Okay, then. Thank you
So
all
just,
the participants, all. Yes, madam, you wanted to tell
No,
something.
I
Say
just
something.
want to say
Yes.
thank you very much. And brick by brick, project by project is my approach. So you
now
never
we
know
can
when small incremental change will become disruptive. And my personal regards to Vice Chancellor. And we're sure lovely things are going to happen from BHU in Gatti. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So now meeting is over.